Okay, well, we've had slight interruption due to internet shenanigans, and there'll be a full investigation taking months, maybe years. Um, don't know. But what we'll do is we'll start again, except we'll start again at the apologies, of which there is one, which is Councillor Jemima Lang, who's in hospital at the moment, and we wish her all the best for a speedy recovery. And in her place at this meeting today, Councillor Sudan has generously agreed to be the Deputy Chair of the Cabinet today. So thank you for that, Councillor Dan. It's very kind of you indeed. Trying not to make it too onerous, but we're not starting out particularly well, are we, with having a complete repeat of what we've done for the first half an hour of the meeting? But there you go. No declarations of interest. Can I agree the minutes of the last meeting on the 16th of October? All agreed, thank you. No public questions, no urgent business from me. So, leaders' announcements. Now, for those of you who have heard this before, I do sincerely apologise, but you're going to have to go through it all again. And I'm going to have to read it as lengthily as I did the first time around, because we are broadcasting to the general public in Plymouth. So I'm going to talk about the Maritime and Marina Maritime Launchpad. The council, the university, Plymouth University and Freeport have led a successful bid to become one of Innovate UK's national innovation launchpads. This is fantastic. It's a national programme and it helps to support clusters of SMEs. And as you know, that's a vital part of our economy. There are launch pads covering digital, health, net zero, agri-tech, food, and now, thanks to this, maritime and marine. The programme's £7.5 million is split into various grant programmes and voucher schemes run by the university. It's important to remember where this came from. The origin was our Marine City deal, followed by the UK's first marine enterprise zone at Ocean's Gate. Then we created the Marine Business Technology Centre. This led to our Ocean Futures Cluster and latterly the Freeport. And now we are the UK's only marine launch pad. There have been a number of briefings, and the next one is shortly. Flow Conference. Now, for us, floating offshore wind. One of our commitments as a new administration was to green jobs. I've personally been really exercised about making sure Plymouth is in place to take the opportunities for the massive investment that's going to come in the Celtic Array. So the Economic Development Team, working with Plymouth University, organised our first ever offshore floating wind conference. The conference was in the box. It wasn't floating and it wasn't offshore, but that's what we called it. With some amazing speakers. It was great. Richard May was there, Richard Allen, and me, whose name isn't Richard. And this really builds on the work that we're doing in terms of developing the first ever port strategy for the city. We've got a recent MOU with Brittany Ferries and ABP. I think I've mentioned this before. We're hoping to see Mill Bay become a net zero port by 2030. In fact, we're working very hard on shore power. If we get that at Mill Bay, it'll mean that we can bring that forward to 2026, which will be absolutely amazing. This week's a big week for us because we've got the last stage now of the Lottery National Trustees investigation into our bid, and they're coming down on Thursday, and we're hoping it'll go to the board in December for decision, which would be great. Look, our project is now a massive £22 million. It's fantastic. It's going to transform the Mountbatten Centre and Peninsula, Tyneside, Mount Edgecombe, Firestone Bay and Ernest Settle Creek. We'll have the biggest ever marine engagement programme, including a massive schools programme, multiple community-based programmes, major nature boost projects, heritage interpretation, and a huge digital project. If it all goes well, which we are confident it will, we hope to have a permission to start in January. Great deal with the Live Nation. Absolutely fantastic. And I mean, basically, this is the UK's largest outdoor promoter, um, and which is fantastic for us to have it on Plymouth Hoe. You know, people will remember the MTV stuff and what a platform that was around the world. Well, this is likely to be just as great. Um, and we're hoping to hear very, very shortly about having some big names because Live Nation, basically, they look after virtually everybody who's anybody. It's incredible. Apart from Taylor Swift, I think, who is got her amazing. She looks after herself very well. Um, we brought Bonfire Night back as part of our action plan on cost of living. And we had 25,000 people turn up to the Hoe, which shows it was worth doing, Sue. And you were behind that, and Mark was behind that, and others. And it was brilliant that we got that project back after it had been cancelled by our previous administration. I think it just goes to show that it's popular with the public. They really like it, and it helps as well. It helps the fire brigade because there's less people lighting fires in their own gardens and stuff like that. So it's really good, and it's also good for Barbican business and city centre business too. Destination Plymouth. Now I really want to pay tribute here. Jemima took a report to the growth scrutiny committee and I wanted to share one of the stats in the report. In 2023, so far, and we haven't finished yet, we reached a global audience of 2.5 billion people, valued at an advertising spend of £62 million. Incredible. And bear in mind that last year, it was 650 million and 18 million of advertising. So in other words, we've quadrupled what we did. Stellar performance by Destination Plymouth. And I want to pay tribute to Amanda Lumley's work. We talk about Amanda and her team, but there aren't many of them. And what she does for the city with the resources she has is miraculous. So I'll pay tribute to Amanda Lumley, but also to the PCC investment team, who are also some of our stellar performers, attracting business and interest to our city. And they do ever such a lot to get the name known out and about across the world. I'd like you to know that the box has now had 660,000 visitors since its opening. Over half term alone, we had 11,000. It's 20% up on last year. Incredible to the team, the box team there, dealing with that. And of course, we've had this fabulous programme over the summer, celebrating Plymouth's own and Plimpton's own, Joshua Reynolds. You've probably seen, hopefully you've heard about the Solihull restoration project as well. That was a major event on the internet, and also the BBC celebrated it. And we've just opened a magnificent exhibition, Dutch flower paintings. You really need to go and see that. It's just incredible work. And I'm so thrilled that we've got a major new film by John O'Confra. And John was very much a part of our opening celebrations at the box. Really renowned international artist and great friend of Plymouth and great friend of the box. And last but not least, Gus Honeybun. Gus Honeybun's really important in Plymouth. I mean, as somebody not from Plymouth, I didn't have the anxiety of sending in a birthday card and waiting and hoping and having my hopes dashed that it would be read out, that there would be some sort of magic button or there would be, you know. And, but from the number of people that turned up to the box to meet Nish Kumar and Josh Widdicombe, and have their name read out by Gus because they haven't had it as a child. It's just incredible. It just shows how incredible this is. And, you know, it couldn't have gone better. And it's going to be, I have a feeling that Josh and Nish are going to perhaps take the rise out of us a little bit when it comes on the telly, because that's a great show they do. But what a fantastic thing to have done, and look forward to seeing the final results of that. Finally, that light show on the Civic Centre, the Ben Ockery poem. I mean, it's just incredible. And Ben Ockery came down, Jemima met him, and he wants to come back. He's really, really thrilled by what Plymouth is doing in the cultural space. And to have somebody of his reputation being a friend and a champion to us it'll be awesome. So well done to all the team, Hannah and the team at Plymouth Culture, for all the work that they've done in bringing that to Plymouth. Speaking of Jemima, which I was, I have to deputise for her now because she's not here. So I'm going to read out a couple of announcements from her. She talks about the Reynolds. Just to say, you know, it's just incredible what's been going on. Just the changes that our wonderful staff in the museum do to change the spaces, to change the gallery, to change the lighting, to change the walls. I mean, it is incredible. They are, you know, they are some of the best builders around. So we've got that John O'Confra Arcadia film, you know, will have a decent space to show it in. It's going to be incredible. We're hoping for, when we have the launch on the 29th of November, that we're going to have quite a bit of media interest, because this is another big thing that's happening. And it's great to have these sort of unveilings in our city. You know, it's one of the reasons why we built the box. So the public will be able to see from the 30th of November what's going on there. Jemima would like people to know that there was a joint committee meeting about Mount Edgecombe. We had a presentation from Richard Pyshorn, Director of Secure Forests, CIC. He was the guest speaker. He gave a short but excellent presentation on his inspirational work with veterans, and he's actually based at Mount Edgecombe. That's good to know. And there's it's online, the work is online, so you can follow it. We had Councillor Penrose join the meeting yesterday, and she's a volunteer at the box. Again, I got a paid tribute to not only the staff of the box team, but all the volunteers that work at the box. They are part of the box team, and they do an incredible, conscientious job in making sure that people get information as they're going around. And they're wonderful. I'm going to now ask other members of the cabinet if they wanted to bring us up to speed with anything. And can I start with? Oh, I promised you a video. I did, a film show. Yes, apologies. I'm sorry. And you know, we're only 40 minutes in, and I've forgotten things already. So we're going to do this. This is about Armada Way? Yeah, the consultation. Okay, so let's fire up the dilithium crystals and watch it. Hello, I'm Tudor Evans, leader of Plymouth City Council. What a fantastic time to be in Plymouth. We're doing some brilliant things in the city centre, and so exciting, but it's so important that we get it right. And that's why I'm asking you, your family, shoppers, business people, visitors, to get behind this by looking at our exciting plans, letting us have your views on what you think. It's by hearing those views that we can make this scheme the best that it can be. Well, we've got to talk about the trees, and we've got to talk about the greenery. So we're going to be putting in more trees than were there before. We're going to go for over 200 in that bit of Armada Way, where there were only just over 150 before. So it's fantastic. And that'll help with the diversity. And those trees are going to be incredible and appropriate and in the right place. But on top of that, we're going to be bringing in wildflowers. We're going to be bringing in reed beds. We're going to be bringing in bug houses. We're going to be bringing in all sorts of stuff to improve the biodiversity of Armada Way. It's going to be livelier than it was before. So it's also going to be a place for play. Any of us that look after little ones, I've got grandchildren, will know that being around a shopping centre ain't necessarily the easiest thing to do. That's why we're going to bring in a huge play area. The size of 5 tennis courts. It'll be a place where you can run, jump,
swing, and splash, because there's going to be a fantastic set of fountains to play in as well. It's going to be glorious. We're doing it for families and we're doing it for visitors, but we're doing it for the shopkeepers as well, because people will come to town for this. It's going to be a significant destination, and we hope that you enjoy it and you love it. So we now need to go underground. We're doing this thing called SUDS, which is a Sustainable Urban Drainage Scheme, and it's going to run the length of Armada Way. Why are we doing it? Well, it'll help us to catch rainwater, which currently runs off the hard surfaces and into Plymouth Sound, carrying all that muck with it. This will be cleaning the water. It will also be feeding the trees that are in Armada Way. It's really clever. It's powered by solar. And really it's going to future-proof the city centre for future developments, because it's not going to put pressure on our sewage system and our drainage systems in the city centre. In fact, it's going to aid it. So we've been looking at the way the city centre will perform at night under this new scheme. Now this is really exciting, because we're going to have lighting schemes in there that's going to make it look beautiful. The way the trees are going to be means you can look across Armada Way, so you won't have that feeling of enclosure. The new Armada Way at night will be a place that you want to come to and stay in, not run away from. So we're putting in a cycling scheme in there that means that cyclists won't be bombing through the city centre at speed. We're going to put barrel bike racks in there. It's going to be a fantastic way of doing your active travel. And what a view! So where do you come in? You can help us by getting involved with our consultation partners, ECF, who've set up a portal. That's letstalkarmadaway.co.uk. Or you can come into town and meet one of them walking around with iPads, and you can see the plans and you can feed back what you think of them right there and then. ECF will also be going around to a number of stakeholders and community groups in the city to get their views on what's needed. This is the most important thing to happen to Armada Way in 80 years. You can help us by being a part of it.
Unbelievable day to record. We had everything happening in Princess Street. I mean, you know, like you say, oh, we had the odd car. I mean, we had every form of vehicle known to humankind coming past us and drilling, and it was great. Anyway, it was all right.
It didn't rain.
No, it didn't rain. That was good. It was good. Right. Well, thank you very much indeed, and the equity cards in the post. Right. So, if I could now ask Sally Hayden if she has any announcements, please.
I have, leader, and thank you. I'm really happy to announce that this week in our libraries we will be starting to offer some small selection of stationery items. This includes pens, envelopes, bulldog clips, document holders. This came around from a response to customers asking for such items, and every sale will generate extra income for our library service. Therefore, the council will promote this through in-house posters, leaflets, and via social media channels, news and emails to our new customers. The other thing that's happening in our libraries at the moment is called Donate a Coat. So the library service is pleased to announce that people are invited to donate a coat of 5 of our libraries that may turn to provide benefit to others. Clothes racks are displayed and donated coats are found at Central Library, Plymstock, Plympton, St Budo and Southway libraries. But more so, these libraries, in each of their pockets, will hold a book from our withdrawn stock, and also alongside it will be a Christmas card from our library service. So everybody will feel that somebody is thinking of them this Christmas. The library service will also be offering 11 spaces across the city for keeping people warm, where they can go and keep warm and have companion. So that's the library service. I'd also like just to mention about our 16 days of action for our violence against women and girls. We'll be starting this off on the 25th of November. I won't go into too much detail because I'm sure we will hear a lot about it later on. But just to give you an idea, on the 25th of November, there will be known as the Orange Plymouth Peace Walk. And people will be asked if they would like to take part in this and walk through the city centre, and you will end up at Nancy Astor statue. We will also, our public buildings, be turning orange. For example, Smeaton Tower will be orange, the hospital and the Theatre Royal. There's lots more going on, but if you don't mind, Tudor, I would like to pick that up later on in our meeting.
Thank you very much indeed, Sally. And I wondered, Sue, whether you wanted to say anything.
I've just got 3 updates. The first one is just about brickfields. We keep talking about investment in the city. We talked about the box earlier on. We've also talked about the National Marine Park Horizons visit this week. But we've also got £21 million going into brickfields. 3 planning applications have now been submitted. 1 for brickfields, 1 for the hockey pitch at Stoke Dabra and 1 for Petonk. And it's just to reinforce the fact that this is a real investment in sport, both at a high level and at community level and as a community hub across the city. The second one is just an update of the cost of living plan, because you know this runs and all the advertising runs up until Christmas. It is still a really, really important thing for us to be talking about in the city. People will now be getting their energy bills in, and most people's energy bills will be at least double what they were 2 years ago. There is very little help and support now, and those bills are double with people cutting back on their heating costs. Over the last 4 weeks, 2,500 people are still accessing the hub, and the 3, and I hate to say the word popular, because it's not popular to have to go onto the cost of living hub, but it shows how needy people still are, because they're accessing welcoming spaces and where they can go to be warm, free things to do, and all the support and that they can get with food costs. Recently, we've had Talk Money Week, which is about encouraging people to access financial help sooner rather than later when they start to begin to struggle. We did all the free events, and you mentioned the bonfire earlier, Leader, over half term. But we've also launched our Warm Spaces programme, and we're encouraging smaller places to apply to the household support funds so that they can access some funding to help open community spaces that people can go to keep warm. And it's not just about keeping warm. Last week I went up and did something for BBC Spotlight at the Manhattan Sports Hub. The people who go there find that not only can they go there a couple of times a week and have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, but they're meeting people, and it's dealing with social isolation as well in communities. So it's not just about a place that is warm, it's trying to get out into communities to try and help support people who may not know that they need help, because when they go there, they're also getting help with things like their benefits and heating costs and all the other things that we're able to offer. I also want to talk about something that is changing, because I said about people wanting to access food support. We've just opened our 3rd food club. Now, a food club is different from a food bank, because to be part of a food club, you pay a small amount to be a member, but you can access good quality food at a more reasonable price. And when you go there, people are also having things like cooking lessons and how to manage a budget. So we've had 2 very successful ones, both at Manadon and Southway, and the 3rd club that's just opened is the Mayflower Food Club, which is connected to Mayflower School. So this is a way that we can continue to promote and support people during the cost of living. The next phase is going to be about warm spaces and how to perhaps reduce your heating costs. before we move into the support and help at Christmas time, because that is always a very, very difficult time for families. And then we don't always talk about achievements, but Plymouth Active Leisure went up to the UK Active Awards at the end of last month, and they came second for the best marketing campaign category for the innovative Be Inspired. So this fits in with our Active Plymouth motion, where we're trying to make sure that people not only access sport to be sporty, but access leisure to be fit and healthy. Because we know the more people who are active, the better it is for their health and well-being, as well as their physical activity. Over half term, the Fit and Fed programme, again, offered 1,966 family swims at the Life Centre. Again, supporting families during a time when it's not always easy, and actually to have our kids swimming is great, and it links in with the National Marine Park. See, it all links in together. We have a golden thread. And then finally, people see the Life Centre as a place to go swimming, but did they know that we have a youth climbing series held there with 700 climbers on our climbing wall at the Life Centre? We've had swim leagues from both Plymouth and Exeter. We've had a Raiders match, and we've even had a boxing event at the sports hall. So just to say that, you know, sport in Plymouth is on the up, and we are celebrating a lot of our young people's and older people's achievements. And that's it. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you very much indeed, Sue. Mary, can I invite you to make some announcements, please?
Thank you, Leader. Just to let you know that it's Adult Safeguarding Awareness next week, from the 20th to 24th of November. Maybe not something that we all know about, but nationally, Safeguarding Adults Week happens, and it's an opportunity for people and organisations to come together to raise awareness of the importance of safeguarding issues. The aim is to highlight key safeguarding issues, start conversations, and raise awareness of adult safeguarding in our city. In Plymouth, the Safeguarding Adult Partnership has a unique statutory role in assuring itself that partners have effective safeguarding arrangements in place and are cooperating and assisting with the planning and delivery of services for adults who may be in need of care and support. During the week, partnership representatives are spending time in a number of the city's health and wellbeing hubs, raising awareness, listening to people's experiences and signposting. In Monday, they're at the Jan Cutting Centre at North Prospect. Tuesday the 21st, they're at Improving Lives at Ernest English House within the city centre. And on the 23rd, they're at Four Greens at Whitley. We will also use social media and our digital channels to share messages with a wider audience. The partnership is also launching 3 new accessible awareness videos to highlight situations that people may face and how help and support can be provided. The video focuses on abuse and neglect, well-being and self-neglect, and homelessness. However, the message remains the same. Everyone has the right to live their lives free from violence, fear, and abuse. If you see or hear about something that could be abuse, and if somebody tells you something that has happened to them, which could also be viewed as abuse and neglect, contact Plymouth City Council on the 01752 668 000 or report it online at www.plymouth.gov.uk/report abuse. Abuse. Don't tolerate it. Don't ignore it. Report it. Safeguarding is everyone's business. Thank you, Leader.
Very powerful message there, Mary. Chris Pendathy, would you like to give us some announcements?
Thank you, Leader. There are a few bits I just want to touch on, 2 of which I'm going to surprise you with just because they've popped up in terms of people talking to me since. The first one I just wanted to pick up following Sue's announcements about cost of living. During the cost of living workshops and other conversations we've had, it's been very clear that some of the suggestions and partnerships offered haven't been about some of the quick fixes that we needed for the cost of living action plan. I just wanted to reassure you and everyone else that we've not forgotten those. And tomorrow morning at the Council's Cabinet Advisory Group on Child Poverty, we will be beginning to look at those longer term solutions and how we begin to introduce those as well, and get those into our longer term work on tackling poverty in the city. Similarly, the food co-ops have been absolutely amazing, the first two with a third, producing some really good results, and that's come out of actually quite a long-term piece of work that happened to crystallise at just the right time. But I'm looking forward to, over the coming few months, making a number of announcements about how we're going to take that work forward to support sustainable food in Plymouth, some of which are currently embargoed, but I'm hoping the first of those I might be able to tell Council about on Monday. Secondly, I'd like to talk a little about social enterprises. 10 years ago this month, Plymouth achieved or was awarded our status as a social enterprise city. We were the first social enterprise city in the country and the second place to be awarded social enterprise status as well. At the time, it was commented that the council was really quite good at supporting social enterprises and creating a place where social enterprises could flourish. Last week, I was at the launch of this year's Social Enterprise Festival, and it was really encouraging to hear not only local social enterprises and the Plymouth Social Enterprise Network commenting about how much more we've been doing since then, but to hear Social Enterprise UK, the Social Enterprise Mark, and others talking both publicly and to me about the vast difference that a supportive council and administration has made to the development of social enterprises in the city. It's always nice to hear other people telling us that we're doing well. I was able at the launch event to talk a little about what we had been doing. I won't go through my 20 minutes now because we haven't got time, but it was really quite amazing as I reflected and brought things forward. We have invested millions of pounds in supporting social enterprises over the last 10 years, and we continue to do so. And I think that's really exciting. It shows that we as a council value businesses that are good businesses with a social purpose that also add to the fabric of the city, especially those that are owned by people in the city, which means that people in the city are also able to benefit from any profits that are generated. So it's a real virtual circle we've been involved in encouraging, and it's good to see that being recognised. The festival continues right through to this Friday, so if you're listening online and think I want to find out more about social enterprises, please go to the Plymouth Social Enterprise Network website, have a look and see what's going on and join in some of the events. It is an amazing programme they've pulled together. My thanks to Gareth and his team at the Plymouth Social Enterprise Network for everything they've done on making that happen, and also especially to the Rank Foundation, who have invested £5.75 million in social enterprise development in the city over the last 7 years. And I've been talking to Phil Davies about how we work together going forward on maximising the impact of both of our investments. So it's not something that's finished, it's something worth celebrating, and we'll be doing more. Leader, I now want to move on to talk about a couple of areas of housing. Firstly, I want to talk a bit about what we're doing with the private rented sector. Over the past few months, I've had a number of really positive meetings with the South West Landlords Association. These replace meetings we used to have on a similar frequency with what we called the Private Rented Sector Partnership, that really didn't have many people from the private rented sector in it and achieved not a lot. So I've been really pleased that South West Landlords Association, with their massive reach into landlords and agents, have agreed to act with us to actually bring thinking together and help us work out strategically how we support the private rented sector and see its improvement, something they want and we want. We've together identified a number of areas of common concern, and we've agreed an initial way forward to address quite a number of these. We all know that damp and mould, pest control in HMOs, management of waste, dealing with antisocial behaviour, awareness of legislative and council policy changes, inventories and repairing obligations are all areas of concern that crop up for our casework, for them through inquiries and in our enforcement teams. So we've been thinking about how we can start by working with the willing, and supporting those who are doing well and want to do better. That's the vast majority of landlords. So we have agreed that over the next 15 months, they will be carrying a substantial number of articles from us in their quarterly newsletter. We're also talking about potentially doing an additional feature, which is just on all of the messages that we want to get out, which would be an added bonus to their members and would reinforce the things that we're putting in their regular newsletters anyway. And those articles will cover all of those areas and more. And that's a really generous offer from them, because that's their commercial space that they're giving to us to drive our messages home. We've also talked to them about what we can do to back that with more information. And we've agreed that we will fund a series of training opportunities over the next 15 months that will cover all of those areas, giving practical advice to landlords on how to deal with it, how to sort it out, and what will happen if they don't. Because it's important that we support those who want to do well, but make it clear that if people don't take action, that they are liable for some results if that happens. And we will take that seriously. We are currently heading into that 5-year cycle where the majority of the HMOs in the city seek relicensing. Now, in the last 5 years, there have been a number of legislative changes, and as a council, we have adopted a number of additional policy areas that have an impact on HMOs. So we'll be working with South West landlords to make sure that all of those are well communicated in advance of licence renewal, as well as contacting the landlords who already have licences, to make sure that when they come to renewal, they are really up to speed and able to do what they need to do. I would hasten to say that we take HMO licensing seriously, and it's important that landlords know that. Recently, we fined an HMO landlord £13,000 for not registering 3 premises. If we find HMO landlords not registering for their licences, we will take action. Similarly, if they don't make improvements that we know need to be made, and they continue to not do so after we've done all the nice stuff, we will take action. And depending on what it is, their fines could be into tens of thousands of pounds. We don't want to enforce, but if people don't behave, we will. We want to support responsible landlords. We want landlords at a point where they are struggling themselves with all the external financial implications of interest rates and utility costs and repair costs, and are feeling, they tell me, under attack from national government policy. We want to support those good ones. We want them to stay in the market, not leave it. We need them as part of our housing solutions. But if they don't improve their practices as bad ones, if they flout the rules, we're going to come after you. And we're going to do it in partnership with the sector, because the sector has told us they want to be an exemplary sector here in Plymouth. I've just mentioned the housing crisis, and I wanted to move on to talk quickly about homelessness. Our vision of homelessness quite often, or certainly the public vision of homelessness, is those people who sleep rough on the streets. And yes, we are seeing a rise. Yes, it's not acceptable. And yes, we are doing things about that. And I look forward to coming and telling you more about that in the future, as we're currently working up some more plans specifically around those people who are caught in rough sleeping. But generally, now, homelessness looks different. Section 21 eviction notices are meaning that people in work are discovering they are homeless because of the nature of the housing crisis that is taking housing out of the financial affordability of so many people. It's continuing to rise here in Plymouth, as it is everywhere else in the country. It's set to be at unprecedented levels. The economic landscape remains dire, with high inflation, and to be quite honest, if the government achieve halving last year's inflation in this year, all it means is that last year's massive inflation and price rises has risen by yet another 5 to 6%. It isn't prices have dropped, it's that they've gone up less than last year, but still substantially more than they had in many years before. And on top of that, increasing cost of living prices, interest rates, putting pressure on homeowners and landlords. It really is a nightmare. And many people in Plymouth are beginning to get caught in that net. They're increasingly finding it difficult to squeeze their income to pay for everything, and landlords and mortgage payments going up are not helping at all. And I'm not blaming the landlords for that. They can't rent out properties at less than they're having to pay on the mortgages for them in the first place. All of that across all housing tenures is putting additional pressure on our teams. And this week, both Councillor Lowry and I will be at scrutiny, and I will be spending quite a long time talking about homelessness and the rising levels of demand for people in work and out of work. The local housing allowance has been frozen for the past 3 years. That means that someone in receipt of the local housing allowance, and that's anyone on benefits, if you're on universal benefit in this city, universal credit in this city, you are likely to be in work, not out of work. But all of those people, that allowance no longer covers the cost of their rent. That is having a massive implication. It also means it's difficult for registered providers to build more housing because their leverage of debt funding to fund new developments and maintenance is based on the local housing allowance. Leader, I know that you will be writing to the Secretary of State and the Shadow Secretary of State, particularly on this, and joining our voice to the voice of many local authorities, the LGA, to landlords and to registered providers, about how the local housing allowance needs to be restored to its 2020 levels going forward as a minimum. That really will make a difference. Until that happens, it's causing us problems, and we are seeing more and more people threatened with homelessness, but we are stopping a greater proportion of them becoming homeless because of the actions our teams are taking in so many different ways. We are seeing the impact of that work, and having set up a housing task force co-chaired by Tracy and I, we're dealing with short-term, medium-term and long-term solutions. You'll see the results of that task force in March when we bring forward our new plan for homes that will cover everything from homelessness and temporary accommodation to new builds and everything in between. So the teams are working very hard. We inherited record levels of bed and breakfast accommodation in May. I'm really pleased that we have seen a drop of, on average, 20 households a night in bed and breakfast between May and now. We've still got a very, very long way to go, but that is a marked achievement given that the demand on the front door is growing. We're working with our partners in the Plymouth Alliance to support them by providing loans to enable them to take on more accommodation to help those most vulnerable. You will know, because you've signed them off, that we're doing that with both Path and Young Devon. And we will look to see if we can do more of that. We're bidding for additional money through the Single Homelessness Accommodation Programme. If we're successful on all of our bids, that's 80 additional units of accommodation, for temporary accommodation for vulnerable people, for families, for young people and for general needs being brought on board. And we've recently supported a 7-bed women-only house with Trevi, and that has come on stream. There are a number of other projects in progress as well, which in the short term will create over 30 additional temporary accommodation units. We're continuing to work on new housing developments, trying to speed up the pipeline of new affordable housing. The team is currently working on 43 housing developments across the city of varying types and tenures, trying to get them past the line up, open and occupied. Some of those are 100% affordable sites, some of them mixed sites. But we're working to try and make sure that we get that housing online, because ultimately we need more housing. And we're doing all of that, and there's still more we can do. We know we must be bold and innovative. I'm really thankful for the work we've been doing with Councillor Lowry, and I look forward to bring you something in December, which is our next full step. The reason for making this announcement today is that we've just put on the forward plan the first of those very major capital investments in temporary accommodation. So a bit of a trail as to why next month we'll be coming in with a big capital ask on the basis of meeting housing need and doing what we can do locally. In the meantime, government, please raise the local housing allowance, please bring inflation down faster, and please do something about interest rates. All of those are in your gift, not ours. Thank you, Leader.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed, Chris. And that sounds like a bit of a flying start in trying to tackle some of the endemic housing problems we've got in the city. So we look forward to hearing a bit more about the progress of those in due course. Last but not least on my list, Mark Lowry.
It is indeed, Chair. I just wanted to give Cabinet some assurance around the Community Diagnostic Centre at Colin Campbell Court. You'll recall that it's a significant development in the region of some £25 million. So University Hospital Plymouth, in collaboration with Plymouth City Council, would like to invite you to take part in our public consultation on the proposed Community Diagnostic Centre at Colin Campbell Court. So please come along and join us for the consultation drop-in session at the Guildhall, Plymouth City Centre on Wednesday, the 22nd of November from 12 p.m. to 7 p.m. The consultation is open to all in the local community, and we look forward to seeing you and answering any questions and hearing your views on the proposed development. So there's a press release going out today to that effect, and hopefully that will encourage people to be involved in the consultation, explain how the public can take their part. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Well, hopefully people will get that message. Their views are welcome and wanted. So, let's make sure that we get a good engagement with that. Well, thank you very much indeed. Now, we're introducing a new departure in terms of the agenda of this meeting. So I'm called tentatively LGA Update. Now, what on earth is LGA Update? Well, that's we're members of the Local Government Association, and we get quite a bit out of the Local Government Association in terms of what we will put in financially. We get training support, quite a lot of that actually, mentoring by councillors and officers from other parts of the country. But another thing that the LGA does is act as a voice for local government in terms of talking to government about things that we would like to see done differently. So I just wanted to give a sort of flavour really of kind of some of the things that the LGA has been saying about some of the issues that are affecting local government at the moment. And what we tend to get is we get analysis of stuff. For example, on the King's Speech, they do it so we don't have to. I mean, we do it, but the point is that there's much more of a national flavour to it. I mean, there were some things in the King's Speech, believe it or not, that were actually very useful. So, for example, the LGA is saying really, moving to a smoke-free society and tackling the vaping culture, which we've talked about in this council already, of course. But what the LGA is saying is, not a squeak really about the money that's required to actually deal with this. I mean, how many is it? 5 million vapes thrown away every day, something crazy like that. And of course, the people who deal with the consequences of that litter of councils, but also in terms of the public health side of things, we also deal with that, and we also deal with the licensing bit and all those other things, and legal enforcement. So, it's really important that if the government are going to say they're going to deal with this, that they must come up with the resources to enable councils to do what they need to do. You never know, there may be a big announcement in the autumn statement when all our dreams will come true. Mary?
Leader, I was on a webinar with Professor Whitty, the medical officer of Great Britain, and he had a couple of civil servants there, and they were actually saying that there will be ring-fenced money for public health, looking at some of the issues you've raised there and the enforcement side of it and stuff like that. So there will be money there.
That's been promised by Chris Whitty, who
That's
isn't
been
the
promised by
government. I
I mean, Ruth will
Yeah.
probably
All right.
know
We
who
look
the civil
forward to that.
servants were as well, but yeah, that was, this
Yeah.
money's there, definitely.
Well, you know, I'll, if I could reserve my judgment till I see the autumn statement. Speaking of which, uh, the LGA are doing a lot of sort of lobbying at the moment in terms of things that we need to raise concern about. And again, you know, whether we'll see the results of this in the autumn statement is you know, we'll have to wait and see. But obviously, pressure number one is children's social care. I mean, you know, we've reported about our local pressures, but actually, you know, councils generally around the country have you know, their costs have gone up by about 13.5% across the country for a variety of reasons. And so, you know, we are saying to the government that it was tight before, it's even tighter this year, and it'll be tighter next year. And then, of course, what we're all dealing with as well nationally is the cost of homeschool transport. And again, that's something locally that we've become more and more concerned about, but it's a concern to every LEA around the country. I mean, we've reported, I think, about 1.5 million pressure for us. I mean, it may be more, but, you know, again, collectively around the country, that's huge. We've already had a chat about homelessness services. Chris mentioned it. The LGA's members, which is local councils, are reporting a 20% increase in council budgets to support homelessness with pressures ongoing. And again, we've talked about that and how important it is. So there's lots and lots and lots of stuff. And again, or last but not least, voter ID changes. The government, we are saying, the LGA is saying that government needs to expand the list of accepted ID documents to remove barriers to voting, because it's been well evidenced now that voter ID changes at the last election disadvantaged certain groups of people. I mean, we know on postal votes now that you've got to have, what is it? Your national insurance number to have a postal vote. I mean, these are all things that are not enhancing participation, they're discouraging participation. The LGA is working with people, other partners, the Electoral Services Association, not least, to try and add up really all the problems and new burdens on local authority election departments that have come with the 2022 Elections Act. I've got loads more stuff, but we haven't got time because of earlier timing problems. So I'm going to move on at this point now and go to item 9 on the agenda, if that's all right. And that will be Councillor Mark Lowry and David Northey, Finance and Capital Monitoring Report.
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this is the Council's revenue and capital monitoring position as of period 6, quarter 2. So basically, we're 6 months in. We're at the halfway point of this year's council budget. So I'm pleased to be able to tell you that the net forecast overspend is only £4.766 million. And why I say only is because when I reported to you in quarter 1 what the overspend was, that was some £7.5 million. We've had quite a substantial improvement in period. So thank you and well done to everybody who has made a tremendous amount of effort in getting us to this position. There is, of course, still a further 6 months to go, which is an opportunity for us to close that gap and balance the books, which of course we have to do as a council. The revenue outturn forecast reflects many of the issues that you yourself just raised, Leader, along with Councillor Pemberby earlier on when he referred to homelessness. So if we look at children's services, the projected overspend is £6.138 million. This equates to an additional cost close to 10% of the original budget and is clearly, as you mentioned earlier on, not sustainable. The Section 151 officer, David Norby, who you referred to, is working very closely with the Chief Executive, who is chairing the Children's Services Transition Board, to ensure that our children are getting the care they need, but equally ensuring that we do our level best to ensure that the finances remain robust during this exercise. We're also seeing from the People's Directorate, which is Adult Social Care, an overspend of some £3.7 million. Some positive news there. There hasn't been any change in period. You also referred to home to school send public transport. Once again, we're seeing a significant increase in our costs in that area, in excess of £1.5 million to date. And Councillor Penberthy did talk about homelessness, and that is currently projecting an overspend of some £2.423 million so far this financial year. So there are a tremendous number of areas that are causing the council some problems at the moment. The pressures have been partly offset by some £5.186 million of budget savings identified corporately, and they're set out in this report. We, along with officers, will be working very hard to achieve a balanced position by the end of the financial year. As I've said, we are required to do so by law. Just to give you some comfort, the saving targets originally within this budget was some £23 million, and as of period 7, we're projecting savings forecast in the region of some £19 million. And the remaining £4 million in year, and we obviously hope to achieve in the coming months moving forward. So some significant issues, which I will come back to later on in respect of next year's budget, which is the next item on the agenda. But the report also sets out the capital monitor position as of this period, and also sets out a capital forecast budget from 23 all the way through to 28. And that has increased from £5.57 million to £6.29 million for the 5-year period. This forecast also includes a revised capital programme of some £18.6 million in this financial year, and additional £18.2 million for the projected remainder of the 5-year financial capital programme, and they are set out in Annex 1 of the report. Just briefly, because maybe not everybody gets a chance to look at Annex 1 of the report, which is shown on page 23. And that sets out over 2 pages what our projected forecast spend for 5 years on our capital programme is. You mentioned previously, Chair, in respect of the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport Mill Bay Terminal development, there's some £1.3 million included for that. You also made reference to the marine park and the Tinside Pool and the various projects related to the marine projects. There's some £2.98 million included in there. And you also made further reference to the Freeport, of which there's a further £8.64 million included in the capital programme. At the other end of the scale, there's also a £50,000 allocation for a fly tipping intervention scheme, which I'm sure many of us will appreciate. And there's lots of additional funds being made available for improvements in our various youth and community centres across the city. So a substantial increase in our capital programme. Just to give you some reassurance, though, the vast majority of those increases are as a consequence of either Section 151 development monies or capital grants that have come into the council. So period 6, like I say, we're halfway through. We've still got a long way to go. We've seen a substantial improvement, but it is fair to say that the issues that we are experiencing as a council around children, homelessness, adult social care and SEND are having a huge financial impact on our budget. And I'm pleased to say all of us in this room are working incredibly hard to do our very best to balance this year's budget. And I'm assured, in working with our 151 officer, David Norby, and his team, that we do have plans in place to achieve a balanced budget at the end of this financial year. Thank you, Chair.
Very much indeed. There's a lot going on in spite of everything, I think it's fair to say. and that's quite a list. I hope everybody was noting what you're saying. I mean, we probably do need to repeat that again at the council meeting on Monday week, I think, just to give a little, make sure the message has got across. David, is there anything you need to say?
Thank you, Leader. Just on that very point, so the capital section of this report will now go forward to council, assuming that it's approved this afternoon, so there will be an opportunity to look at that one. I think I just want to say it's disappointing that we're still close to 5 million, but I can see the direction of travel, so that's encouraging. I always set the target that we get to end of Q3, which will be December. If we're bobbling around the 1.5 million, we've got a good chance of the run into the end of the year. So we are on trajectory for that. So I think we're going in the right direction. And as Councillor Larry has pointed out, I'd be more concerned if we were working in isolation here, but we have got national problems that we're dealing with: homelessness, children's and adults. So we're not alone. Doesn't make it easier for us, but hopefully, who knows? We've got the autumn statement next week, and there might be some funding that comes our way. But we're going in the right direction here.
Thanks very much indeed, David. And I think we want to add our thanks to everybody who's making this budget work. As you said, it's a lot of hard work to do. It's very easy to make announcements about how you're going to do it at the budget meeting, but then the doing it is the real difficult part. Okay, so as you heard, we note the forecast, we note the capital budget, and agree to recommend these amendments to full council for approval. Are we all happy with that? Can I see a show of hands on that? Brilliant. That's nearly unanimous. But I now move on to item 10. Apologies. Draft budget. Councillor Lowry again.
So, once you've balanced this year's budget, you get the pleasure of setting a next year's budget, and that's exactly what officers and members have been doing over the past few months. This report is for you today, which sets out our draft proposals for the budget for next year, so that's 24-25. It is not the final budget, it is part of the process, and we still have a lot more work to do. And as we've already heard several times today, national inflation, energy costs, increased demands, rising social care costs, homelessness are continuing to increase, and therefore will have a significant impact in setting this budget going forward. This report sets out our draft budget and is subject to change, which we'll hear more about in the autumn statement, which will be announced next week from memory, the 22nd of November. On that date, we don't normally hear specifically what our allocation is. We'll hear that in late December, so the budget will be subject to further change there. Budgets are very complex. We deliver over 300 services. Not everybody gets to see and form an opinion on each and every service that we do, but we are aware that the general public are equally concerned about homeless and adult social care and children, but they're also concerned about how their street looks and how their home looks. So we've made an additional allowance in this budget to ensure that there is adequate funding to repair the potholes and keep our roads safe. And we've also made a significant increase in providing additional funding for the grass cutting services. We've received a number of complaints this year. We've listened to those complaints, and we have acted, working with Councillor Brysdell specifically around the grass cutting service to ensure that we do increase that grass cutting service moving forward. So this report also highlights that there is a shortfall of funding of some £2.358 million next year. So we need to close that gap, and of course we'll be working as a cabinet along with officers over the coming months to ensure we do exactly that. We of course have to wait for the government settlement in the next coming weeks. Given the scale of the problems that exist around the issues that we've raised previously and discussed previously around adult social care and children's homelessness end, I would hope and pray that government are actually listening to local councils, and they're going to need to actually increase their funding, because if they don't, services are just going to struggle to meet the demand that currently exists. So that's where we are, and but we also made a commitment as a Labour council moving forward that we set a number of objectives in our manifesto, and those are set out in this budget, and to give people the assurance and just to remind them that we said there would be fewer potholes, we said that the streets would be cleaner and greener, we said we'd increase greener transportation, we said we'd build more homes for both social rent and affordable rent, and we also said that we'd invest in the green infrastructure with jobs, skills and better education. Each of those aspects, along with keeping children safe, adults safe and our community safe, are all included in this budget. So what happens next? Well, we go out to public engagement with businesses and to the community and ask their views and opinions, and hopefully they can give us some further ideas on not only how to save money but increase income. In parallel with that, this budget will go to scrutiny for further consideration on the 6th and 7th of December. And then when after all that's done, we got some more information, Cabinet will consider a further report in January and in February of next year, which will then go to budget, then go to the full council budget setting committee on the 26th of February from memory, in which they then propose a final budget for council to vote on. So a tremendous amount of hard work to get to this stage, and once again, my due thanks goes to David Norby and his team, along with all the officer team that support the Chief Executive in doing this. But I think we're in a good position. We understand the scale of the problem. We've all put the hard work in our various budgets to ensure there's adequate funding going forward next year. So I would like Cabinet to support me on taking this budget forward, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think you've made the case. Tom, I'll hear you're getting more money.
Yeah, on that point, just wanted to thank Councillor Larry for what he's done on grass cutting. You know, we promised in May to be a listening council, and we've certainly heard feedback on that aspect of the grounds team. I think it's fair to say that the budget that we received from the previous administration for this area hasn't been sufficient, and this extra 300 grand will go a long way in terms of meeting people's expectation. And we know that in order to do the biodiversity enhancement work on certain patches of our green estate, we also need to be getting it right on amenity areas as well. And I think this extra investment will help us to do that.
Thank you very much. Chris?
Yes, I must admit, when I was reading through this, I was delighted when I came to 6.11. And for the last 2 years, while we've been in opposition and in scrutiny, budget scrutiny, we have challenged how the homelessness budget is going to be sufficient given current levels and forecasts. In this year, on the 1st of April, the homelessness team had 30% of the people in bed and breakfast without a budget. It's unsurprising, therefore, that they've been unable to tackle it effectively. I'm really grateful that what Mark has done next year is said this is the realistic budget, set a realistic budget, and has, because of the work we've been doing on the Housing Task Force, not only are we sure we can manage with that, but we're also looking at how we can make changes in the next few years that will bring the homelessness costs down. So we've been able to set realistic savings targets for next year, and I think that will be reflected in the next few years as well, as we really see us tackling what we're doing here locally. If Mark hadn't done what he's done, all next year we would have been doing was repeating the cycle of firefighting, rather than being able to say, we know what we're doing, let's actually concentrate our emotional energy and our time and effort on solving the problem, rather than just trying to go round and round in the circle of justifying why we're over budget all the time. So I'd like to say a big thank you to Mark, David and the teams for enabling us to do that.
Thank you, Chris. We all agree with that. I'm very sure of that. Sue, did you want to say something?
No.
You're okay. Right. Well, in that case, I'll move to recommendations. Oh, sorry. Forgot to ask David, did he want to add anything?
Oh, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Mark, for summing that up so well. So, stating the obvious, there is still a gap. So we're not where we need to be, and we've still got to work together, as was alluded to. And there is a lot that could happen. We have got the autumn statement next week, as you say. It's later than last year again, which means that will have a knock-on effect to our actual final or provisional settlement, which probably is going to come out now the Wednesday before Christmas. So there'll still be work to do, but we'll do what we can to get an update back to you as Cabinet early in January. But yeah, we're close. We're closer than we were when we did the MTFS, which was just a couple of months ago, but there is still a distance to travel.
Thank you. Okay.
I also want to mention the potential council tax second homes allocation. You'll recall we discussed that this year in our budgetary meeting. We weren't able to enact that in its entirety due to a delay in legislation from central government. We're still not entirely sure where we are with respect to that because it continues to be delayed. But once we get some news on that, that will hopefully form part of our budget this next year, so we can understand how that may affect future years. So just want to give you some assurance we haven't forgotten about that. And once we learn some more, that will form part of our budget moving forward as well. Thank you, Chair.
I mean, this government's not known for dithering around big questions, so I'm sure we're all looking forward to that. And as Mary says earlier on, they've already promised uplift in terms of public health funding. Although we have to say that if it's like last year's, it'll be not an uplift, but a downdraft because they don't keep up for inflation. But we'll see what happens. We remain hopeful. As it's that near Christmas now, we can start wishing for things, can't we? I've got to ask you, please, as a recommendation that the Cabinet notes this report and that is subject to change, as Mark and David's both been saying, in line with any government autumn statement. The provisional settlement adjustments and changes required will be there. Will come forward, as Mark said, as amendments to this in due course. So are we all agreed on the recommendation? Marvellous. Thank you very much indeed. Once again, can I add my thanks to David and his team and to Mark for the hard yards they're putting in at the moment on this. Okay, so I'm going to move to item 11. This is an item called Renewal of Armed Forces Covenant, and some of the more observant of you will have noticed that we've been joined by Councillor Pauline Murphy, our Armed Forces champion, and I will ask Chris Penberthy to start the proceedings, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'm going to kick off with some background and then Pauline is going to come in with another little bit and we'll see where we go. It is undeniable that Plymouth is a military and preeminently a naval city. And this has a massive implication on us. We, of all local authorities in the country, have the second highest veteran population. As a city council, we are well known, and rightly so, for our big remembrance and celebration set piece events. And at this point, I think I should pay tribute to everyone involved in organising activities over the last couple of weeks, as we have commemorated and remembered through Armistice Day and Remembrance Sunday, whether that be poppies on the Council House, and thank you to Councillor Murphy for organising that, to the impressive display on the Hoe yesterday, which despite the driving rain attracted thousands of people from the city, to the lighting of the city centre by the city centre company, and so many other things that organisations and individuals around the city have done. That has been amazing, but our teams play such an integral part in all of that, and especially in Remembrance Sunday. Similarly, Armed Forces Day, ours might not be National Armed Forces Day every year, but it might as well be, because it's always the biggest and it's always the best. Our teams do really well at that, but our commitment to our armed forces communities is so much deeper and so much broader, and that is worth celebrating. And when we're talking about those communities, we're talking about our serving personnel, we're talking about their spouses and partners, we're talking about their children, we're talking about the territorials and their families, we're talking about cadets, and of course we're talking about that vast veteran population and their partners, and in the case of some of the younger veterans, their children and young people as well. It really is an enormous part of our city's life. In 2012, I was really pleased that it was one of our administrations that signed the very first community covenant, and I was really pleased that at that point we appointed the council's first Armed Forces and Veterans champion, a role that Pauline undertook then and in our administrations has undertaken ever since. And Pauline has certainly added enormously to the work we do as a city, not only as a council but as a city in this field. It was great under another one of our administrations to achieve silver recognition in the Employment Recognition Scheme, because it matters to us not only what we do for others, but how we act as an organisation. Recent changes in legislation have totally changed the way the old community covenant worked. The old community covenant was voluntary. It was about the role we did in facilitating partnerships across the city to support our armed forces communities. Now, under legislation, our covenant is our organisational commitment, and that has drastically changed the look and feel of covenants around the country. Last year, in anticipation of that, Councillor Shea laid out a new covenant for the city of Plymouth, or for at least the council in Plymouth. That work was subject to scrutiny in its own right, and certain elements were examined by other scrutiny panels. There were no changes made last year to the covenant on the basis of any of those scrutiny recommendations. As an administration, we knew that we needed to listen to the feedback of councillors last year and of the broader community and what they thought our community covenant should look like. Since then, we have received Gold Employer Recognition status, the very best that any employer in the country can achieve, and I think our tributes go to the entire team for what they've done there. But we knew that wasn't enough, and over the last few months, Pauline and I have been working with officers across the council to look at what we can promise that we will do as an organisation. Promises that we can deliver as part of our business as usual to support our armed forces communities here in Plymouth. As a result, we are proposing today a new covenant, a stronger covenant, a covenant that goes beyond legislative requirements, because we as an organisation go beyond legislative requirements in the way we act day to day. An example of that will be amongst all our staff networks, which cover areas of diversity, we do have a staff network for our armed forces community that allows veterans, partners and spouses, reservists and those involved in the cadet community to come together as a community within us as an employer. But our biggest focus is that we know the strength of our old covenant was less about what we did as an organisation and more about what we facilitated to happen here in the city by pulling people together and enabling conversations and partnerships to develop. And the strength of us working like that was the strength of our covenant. It's no longer thought about in terms of the legislation, and the fact that the legislation says it's what we do has in fact worked against it. I'm really thankful for the work of Pauline and others across the community, which means that our new covenant, pages 56 and 57 of our packs, has a really big bit about what we will do in partnership to change the way Plymouth supports our armed forces communities. We have really embedded that, and I know that's something that our armed forces communities are really grateful for. So that's a bit of the why we're here today. It's a little bit of the big picture, but to really make this live, there's actually only one person who can talk about that with any real passion, and that's Pauline, because she does this day in, day out, and she does it because she believes in it so radically. So Pauline, I just thought it'd be great if you could talk about why the covenant matters to us and some of the practicalities that come out of that.
Thanks, Chris. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for inviting me today. There's just 5 points that I would like to talk about today, because I think it's really important. And the first one is why the covenant matters. The covenant matters because as a local authority, we signed it. We signed it in 2012, and we need to support that. And just to remind you what the actual covenant is about, it's just about the Armed Forces Covenant is a commitment from the nation to those who serve or have served in the British military and to their families. By signing, Plymouth City Council commits that we acknowledge and understand those who serve or who have served in the armed forces and their families should be treated with fairness and respect in all the services the council offers, and that we recognise the unique and selfless sacrifice associated with service and all that we do to support those in the armed forces community. That is what we signed up to do, and if you spoke to the armed forces community, they believe that we actually do that. And it's not just about the armed forces community, it's about this city. If you look at all the people that attended that remembrance service yesterday, they believe that as a local authority, we are doing our best for our armed forces community, and we have to keep doing that. We have to keep looking after our armed forces community, whether it be reservists, veterans, spouses, children, the whole lot need to be looked after by us, because that's what we've committed to do. So that's the first point that I'd like to make. The second point is to talk about our children. And I don't know if any of you here have ever spoken to service children. You'll know, I mean, I've heard some very, very sad stories from service children, especially with mental health. I can remember talking to somebody, and they were 4 years old, and they didn't like their dad. They didn't like their dad anymore because their dad was going away. Their dad was going away. He was deployed to Afghanistan. They didn't like their dad anymore because they were so afraid that their dad was not going to come back. So that was their way of coping with it. They did not want to know their dad because of this reason. And that is very, very sad. I also talked to the children about, they can't talk to their mum or their dad or their brother or their sister because they're afraid to. Not because they're going to be shouted at, but because they know that mum, dad, brother, sister have got too much going on in their own lives to worry about what they're thinking. So they keep all of this bottled up. And it's not just about that, it's about their accommodation that they live in. Their military accommodation is not fit for purpose. So we have to make sure that we can get the best for them. That is what we need to do. We really, really need to do this. My third point is about spouses. We tend to forget about spouses because my daughter is an example. Every 2 years, she had to up and leave her job because her husband is being moved around to another area, to another camp. For 2 years, every 2 years. And it's not just about her, it's also about the children, new schools, new friends. It really has an impact on the family. So what is really, really lovely is the fact that in this new covenant, we've actually going to have that written in there that if the spouses or partners fit the criteria to all our businesses that have signed the covenant, they will actually get a guaranteed interview for a job, which is absolutely amazing that we've managed to do this. So that, you know, that is a really, really good thing to have. Partnerships. We've got really good partnerships. I mean, that's proved a point this year with all our poppies. I mean, you know, Councillor Coker, brilliant. South West Highways, done all that lovely bit of artwork out on the front car park for us. Babcock's made great big poppies. Stonehouse donated the net. But if it wasn't for the people of this city that donated all of those beautiful poppies, we wouldn't have had that beautiful poppy wave that we had outside. It's going to be bigger and better next year, but it is. But that's partnerships. That is partnerships. We've got over 70 businesses that have signed our covenant. You know, working with them is just going to be absolutely amazing. We can get a lot more. And what I must also say, all of that work that was done with all the poppies this year, it didn't cost the council a penny. This was all done because of people working with us, partnerships, and so that was amazing. So yeah, all it done was cost us our time, and we just facilitated it. So well done to all of those that they obviously contributed this year. And the last point that I want to make is our partnership with the Navy. Over the last 2 years, there hasn't really been a partnership in the covenant with the Navy because it's always been army focused for whatever reason, but that's changing. We've got Mike Tanner, the base commander, on board now, and we've also got Andrew McConaughey back on board with us, which is absolutely amazing. So all I'm asking today is that all of you agree just to re-sign this covenant because it is important. Some of the key issues were left out of that covenant last year. Me and Chris actually did raise this, but it was still signed. So that's why we've asked for it to be re-signed again this year with all of those points put in. So thank you.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, there's a big chunk of extra work there, but actually, if I read you right, 56 and 57, it's not about more for the council to do, it's more for the city to do. And harnessing all that enthusiasm and all that dedication amongst partners and volunteers, and having them written into the covenant, I think is a really good thing to do. If I could just be a bit of just a spoil sport a little bit on page 52, it still refers to Her Majesty's government. So I think it ought to now reflect, because it was great to see in the Festival of Remembrance the other night the new logo on the drums and everything like that. So just to make sure that when you issue this, it's got to have His Majesty on it. But what a fantastic thing you're doing here. Councillor Murphy, thank you for coming along and articulating the changes to us and the priorities as you see them. Pay tribute to you in particular for your going the extra mile, well, probably about 10 miles if I'm honest, in what you do for veterans and what you're doing in this role as well. Anything, Sally?
Thank you, Pauline, for that. Particularly picking up on children of military families, and one of those things that is really hard, and we know has an impact on children's learning and such, is the actual moving from place to place and starting in different schools, and that has a real impact, and it's really important that we have and we're aware and have that support for both the children and also their families, and support for, because very often those children are with perhaps one parent and the other parent is away, and it's really important that we have that sort of support. I'm pleased to see it says about the Military Kids Club. I was very involved with the Military Kids Choir some years ago, and really delighted when a little boy I taught, who had been 6 years old, came up to me just recently, and I hardly recognised him, but said Mrs. Creswell, and he was like really tall and towering and yes it is, it is. He was, we can talk about him another time, a lovely lad. And the other thing I want to say on a very sort of positive and important is there's two mentions here which relates to skills and employment and civilian life and championing this. But I think we ought to bear in mind that it's to our very much our vested interests and really important for our economy that these people coming out of the armed forces, that they have so much to actually contribute, and we need those skills and those talents coming into our city if we intend to grow our city and our economy to grow. They are absolutely vital and really important. This is very much, I would say, a two-way relationship as well. So thanks very much. Thanks for all you do, Pauline, and pleased to see those little some of those mentions there, which means so much to me.
Okay, so the recommendation. Oh, sorry, Chris, I thought you'd.
So just a quick sum up, Leader, if I may. At this point, just before we move to the recommendation, I'd like to thank Giles, Caroline Marr and Alan Knott for the work they've done in leading the whole council in coming together on this, because this isn't just one department, this is a whole council approach, and it can be difficult to negotiate all of these things with all of the other pressures the council's doing. So thank you to them for what they've done and for the weeding out they've done of discovering what we're already doing so that we can celebrate through our covenant what we're already doing. So Giles, can you pass our thanks on? And Giles and I will make sure that that change you spotted, Leader, is done. I'd like to thank all the cabinet members who got involved, who checked it was all right, especially, and I do want to single one out. I'd like to single out Sue. Commitments 3.2 to 3.6 are all effectively ones around HR. Sue not only listened to what we said, had a meeting, and the thing on spouses where we've actually put in something really important, that a military spouse or partner who meets our criteria will be guaranteed an interview. What came back wasn't just, we'll do it, but we're going to write a guidance note for staff members who are employing and doing that recruitment process so they understand what the covenant means as they do it. Actually operationalising those big promises is what makes this work. And Sue took our ambition and so many of our other ambitions and has worked those through. This is really partnership, and I just thought that was an exemplary one just in the last few weeks. There'll be more over the coming years, I know. I'd like to thank our partners. Obviously, Brigadier Mike and Andrew McGonaghy and their team. Andrew has restarted, under Mike's instruction, the serving personnel group to ensure that we hear their concerns and that they are serving personnel that feel they're able to contribute to the city as well. That's a really important thing. It's been lapsed for the last couple of years. So thank you for them for their support. And of course, in terms of the veterans who fed in so much to our thinking, I'd like to thank the Federation and the Legion and their members. They have made so much difference to making sure we get this right, because it's not just them. They know the wives, the spouses and the kids as well, and they've made sure their voices are heard. So thank you to all of them. Obviously, I will recommend that we approve this. Once we've approved it, the next stage is that we will arrange a formal signing. So Brigadier Mike Tanner will sign on behalf of the Armed Forces, the Lord Mayor on behalf of the Council as the civic lead, Tracy on behalf of the officers and the commitments there, and and Pauline, as our Armed Forces champion, will represent us as an administration in that signing. But we'll arrange that. It's the diaries of Mike and Tracy that we need to get together. So it'll happen soon, but we don't want to make a commitment yet as to when exactly. But I do know that Mike is thrilled about what we've done with the Covenant and is thrilled that the Navy are back in at the heart where they belong. So thank you to everyone who's been part of this. We couldn't have got here today, actually in relatively few months, without the extra mile that everyone has gone to get us here.
Thank you. So the recommendation is that we approve the renewal of the Armed Forces Covenant by Plymouth City Council as slightly amended. All those in favour, please show. Yeah, looks unanimous. Thank you. Pauline, thanks very much for coming along and articulating the needs so well. Thank you. Okay, now the last item on the agenda today, unless anybody's got any surprises, is our update on violence against women and girls campaign, and pleased to be joined by Councillor Zoe Riley, and we've got Megan online, and Jackie's online. Yes, Jackie's here as well. So I'm going to start off by going to Sally Hayden to start off with, please.
Thank you, Lisa. I'd just like to update Cabinet, really, regarding our violence against women and girls, domestic abuse and sexual violence strategy and action plan. I'm pleased to say last week at Safer Plymouth, they were very happy to sign this off, and we will be having our official launch on the 7th of December, which I believe Tracy will be opening. This work builds on a history of tackling these issues and incorporates the work of the Board Commission, bringing together professionals and organisations across the city to work in partnership to make Plymouth a safer place for everyone, including women and girls. The strategy action plan will be delivered over the next 2.5 years and ensures Plymouth will deliver on both its statutory responsibilities around this agenda and its wider ambitions to ensure safety, equality for all of its residents. As part of this, the Council will work with others across the city to deliver actions that will tackle violence against women and girls, domestic abuse and sexual violence. One of the main actions is to be the first area in the UK to achieve a coordinated community response accreditation. This has been pioneered by a national charity called Standing Together. They encourage organisations to come together to ensure that survivors are kept safe, hold people who harm to account and prevent domestic abuse. We are currently recommissioning our domestic abuse and refuge service to help provide a safe accommodation and community support for individuals and families in the Plymouth area. We're also introducing a Healthy Relationship Alliance, increasing education work with young people. We are launching an e-learning and workforce development for the staff alongside refreshing our council's domestic abuse policy. And we are expanding our response to addressing people causing harm by rolling out further bystander training, working with the police and partners to protect people in their homes and also on our city streets by installing the purple help points, working with the NHS and the police by offering the safe bus and working with Best Barnum to implement the anti-spiking in our pubs and clubs. Having zero tolerance approach to this mistreatment, abuse and violation of women and girls is so important to this council. It is vital that as a city we continue to work together to protect our women and girls. Whilst much has been achieved over the past few years, there's still much more work to be done. As we approach our 16 days of activism, we need to continue with our work to ensure victims and survivors are able to escape abuse and be safe, facilitate accesses to service that builds resilience, reducing the risk of families and reaching crisis points, and reducing the impact on children. But we can't do this alone. It is incumbent on all of us to work tirelessly to make Plymouth a safe home for every woman and girl who lives, works, visits and studies here. Overall, the Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Strategy and Action Plan represents a significant step forward in the way that this work is delivered and monitored across the city. I look forward to continuing this work, and I welcome the support and celebrate the development of all that has been achieved to date. And I'm sure Zoe will like to talk to us a little bit more about our 16 days of what's actually going on, if you don't mind if I pass over.
No, that's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Indeed, Sally. Zoe, welcome, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. There's been much movement on the VOG agenda, and I'm inspired by the enthusiasm of our officers. Much of what I've been doing is connecting and networking and kind of being the face of it, and the 16 days is part of that. I like to be on the ground and be busy, and so we've been holding regular meetings regarding the 16 days. There's lots going on other than the DASV strategy. There's also turning Plymouth orange. There will be the art installation from Trevi. And I myself, with the Youth Services and Youth Parliament, is holding an event for a youth conference with VOG at its focus, whereby schools will be bringing their students to the event, which I'm not going to talk too much about because it's not going to be publicised until afterwards because of the sensitivity of it. It's being funded by the Devon Mental Health Alliance. It's going to be a really good day, really good few hours. But if you don't mind, I'd like to just say a few other things that have happened since May. Is that okay? So, violence against women and girls is a topic that is relevant in every organisation, every business, school and group. And by connecting people, I have enabled groups to work together, such as helping organisations like Babcock connect with organisations like Trevi and First Light, which they probably wouldn't have had. Working with Man Culture, and I always want to bring in Man Culture because it's an amazing group of men who are having conversations about the attitudes of men with respect to women, violence against women and girls. And they held their conference back in September, which was a huge success and had so many people attending. And right now, there's a great deal of work, obviously, in the VOG strategy, but moving forward, there's also the VOG Charter, which Megan is going to be working on, and some really exciting stuff with Plymouth Argyle, which again, I can't really talk about. But I'm excited also to be looking with Councillor Hayden on victims, children as victims, and their issues they may face in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed for that, Zoe. I wondered if Megan or Jackie have got anything to add to what's been said.
Just a resounding thank you for the support from the councillors, from the council and across the city for this ever-evolving area of work. The strategy and the action plan represents a consolidation of the work to date and our ambitions moving forward as a city. Additionally, we're going to be highlighting, as both councillors have indicated, we're going to be highlighting and raising awareness of this work during the 16 days of activism, which happens every year from the 25th of November till about the 10th of December. We have a number of events going on during that time to raise the profile of this agenda across the city. But as we know, the work continues long after the 16 days. And so I really look forward, as the strategic lead for the council and for the city, to taking this work forward, to being part of the leadership, and to making a difference, to continuing to make a difference as we move through, not just addressing our statutory responsibilities as a council and as a local area, but also really addressing the landscape, which is ever widening around our ambitions for this agenda.
Thanks very much, Megan. Jackie, anything from you? We've said it all, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, any observations, any comments from Cabinet? You happy with what's been laid out? Sue, sorry, I missed you.
Oh, it's only a question. It was something that you talked about man culture, and you talked about the 16 days of activism. So during the 16 days in the past, we've concentrated very much on raising awareness and the impact on women and families and victims. And I just wondered this year if we were going to have a specific message that was going to be aimed at some of the perpetrators of some of the issues. In other words, some of the men or young boys, or whether we're going into schools, or whether we're doing something which is getting the message across more appropriately to males across the city.
I'm very happy to speak to that. We are awaiting our final design for a citywide campaign, which is around the sentiment of enough. That Plymouth says enough to violence against women and girls. Plymouth says enough to domestic abuse and sexual violence. And so our communications group, which is a citywide multi-agency collaboration with the leadership of Trevi, one of the largest organizations and charities here in the city, working with women affected by these issues, are putting together a final campaign which should be ready later on this week. Ideally, you will be seeing it on billboards, at bus stops, and perhaps on the sides of some of our buildings. The 16 days is when we'll launch the Enough campaign, but we will continue moving, we will continue expanding on that and building on it in the next 12 months. And it is exactly, as you said, Councillor, we will be looking to target those who are causing harm, and not just those who are causing harm, but getting to the root of ideas, ideology, sexism, and misogyny that is at the root of many of these issues that we're seeing in an acute way across the city.
Great, thank you.
Zoe, you want to come back?
Yeah, sorry. So also, I spoke a little bit about my event, and I'm a little bit conscious about what I'm saying, because obviously I don't want people to turn up, or anyone uninvited. However, the whole the reason for the event, the outcomes of the event are hopefully to allow young men to have conversations about what they think violence against women and girls is, what it means to them, because I think we look often at the perspective of the female, and as an experienced person. I'm by no means an expert in the subject. However, we do need to have those conversations, especially with young men, and that's what that will be. At the event, there will also be a HIMSA, or a spokesperson from a HIMSA, who last week I just did training on people who harm, so they also come at it with that. And there will also be Ben Dunks, who he wrote a book on intimacy and how toxic masculinity can affect relationships, particularly with young people and young men. So that's very much at the heart of my event. Thank you.
Well, I think it's making sure that the council is fully behind what is going on, behind the partnership. We want to make sure that that's understood, that the council's giving it 100% in and wishes the campaign well this year. there's lots going on at the moment with people like Andrew Tate and all of that kind of stuff, and the cultism around that, and you know, anything we can do to sort of turn young men away from that kind of toxic masculinity that you were saying, the better, really. Sally, sorry, I was in a...
I think it's absolutely brilliant, the work that you're doing, Zoe, the work that Sally's done, and all the officers, and again, you know, bringing people in together. Will we have a means of, after going through, and I'm not saying in an immediate measure, but after going through these campaigns, and this is not short-termism, but will we have a means of being able to measure the effect of what our impact has been? I mean, it might not necessarily be with hard data, but there might be kind of like soft data and such that will be able to be used. And I just wondered how we're going to measure, and hopefully by measuring that impact, seeing what's really, really worked, so it can be used by other authorities or whatever, and so we know that we're going in the right direction and taking things in the right place.
Anybody want to give that a go?
Megan.
About Megan?
Yes, certainly. The campaign, the Enough campaign, will have a QR code which is attached to a landing page, which will give a various audiences different information. So we'll be able to track the accessing of the QR code and the websites to see how many people see the traction and the traffic coming through that as one sort of quantitative measure. Also, we track things qualitatively, so through ongoing appreciative inquiry and also interviews and surveys with people with lived experience, and also with residents across the city, we will be able to look at the impact probably 3 to 6 months down the line of the campaign as well. Part of having a strategy and an action plan is so that we can begin to bring together our monitoring and tracking of Plymouth's response across the city. So this is very much written into how we measure our performance and how we measure our success in a number of different ways moving forward. So yes, that's hopefully we'll be able to come back to you and to anyone who would be interested in down the line in 2024 to show the impact of the work that we're doing.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much.
Lovely. Well, all this we can say now is, Zoe, thank you so much for coming along. Megan and Jackie, thank you for coming along. Sally, thank you for your update as well. And I mean, that's all we can say today. We look forward to hearing about how it's all gone. You'll come back and let us know, hopefully in the new year, about the what went on in the 16 days of activism. Yeah, good luck with it all. It's really, really important work you're doing, and we're very grateful to you for what you are doing. Okay, well, I think that's the end of the meeting for today, and I congratulate Jamie on his timing. Building that half an hour repeat of the start into things was particularly clever. So we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much.